The big story of the day, the evening, and for some time, the firing by the President of the United States of the former director of the FBI, James Comey. Joining me now, former Assistant Director of the FBI, President of the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund, Ron Hosko, and Senior Fellow with the London Center for Policy Research, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Thank you both for being with us here this evening. Your reactions, Ron, to the firing of Comey. We're asking our audience tonight in our question of the broadcast, do you believe the firing was long overdue? I know there are mixed views on this. What are yours?
Well, Lou, I think that I can't say that even though I'm surprised at how this played out today, the suddenness of it, I thought that this director was trying to walk this almost unwalkable tightrope that balances what the FBI's important work is and battling the political forces in Washington, D.C., almost in an untenable situation. I view it as, going back to the Clinton investigation, the original sin was Hillary Clinton's original sin. I know others view it as Jim Comey's original sin, what he said last July the 5th.
Right.
And I think there is, in fairness to that view, he certainly went far beyond what normal investigative procedures and protocols would have been. But you have to look to the circumstances that he faced. Yeah,
difficult circumstances, no question, but circumstances that he made far more difficult by taking far more, as Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, points out. He violated so many principles, so many regulations and standards and traditions of the FBI with his conduct and his discussion in public of the investigation. It's almost as if, Ron, he forgot he was an investigator first and foremost.
Yeah, usually the Bureau opts for silence. It is frustrating, particularly now when we are so driven by media reports and social media activity. There is a desire within the organization to respond to false reports and bad reports, and I think that was one of the driving forces for his response in July. His fear, because it was whipping around Washington, D.C., and probably around the country at that time, the concern that when Loretta Lynch met with Bill Clinton on that tarmac or on her plane, that was going to cast the entire investigation under a shadow of politics as usual. And I think the director, and I've heard this from him in the past, felt like he had to talk to that for the credibility of the FBI. Today, in 2020 hindsight, that looks like it may have been a mistake. Yeah. I know there are some in our country who believe with all their heart that anything the Clintons touch corrodes. And here may be another example of that, where the back of Jim Comey's badge corroded and fell off of him today. Yeah. And I will tell you this, I worked with Jim Comey. Under me were tens of thousands of criminal cases. Jim Comey is a straight arrow. He would never come into my office and say, hey, Ron, here's how I'd like this case to come out. He is as straight as you find them, and I believe Jim Comey slept well in these last months, believing in his mind he did the right thing.
All right. Well, as you say, he may have thought all of that, may have believed it deep into his heart and soul, but the fact is the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General pointed out what he did violated every one of, not every one, but so many of the regulations and standards. It's beyond comprehension, at least to me. Colonel, what about you? What do you think, Tony?
Well, look, a couple of things I picked up on the last few days. He did not see this coming. James Comey had no idea this review was going on and that his future was at stake. And, Lou, you and I just talked last Friday evening about the very issues, some of the core issues that have been left out there. Look, I think the loss of confidence was not only publicly. I think some of the internal issues, I've talked to my friends in the FBI. He has done things to upend that organization by his, what I would say, wacky decisions. I think maybe in his mind they were clear. They were not clear to the workforce. And look, let's be clear here. I don't think his testimony helped him one iota. He was forced to admit that there was unmasking going on of Mr. Trump and his associates. He had never said that before. And I think, to mix a metaphor, I think the Sally Yates disclosures didn't help him. I think that was the straw that put the football across the finish line, if you will, to mix a bunch of metaphors there. I think that was it. And I think Mr. Trump has thought a lot about this. I think he was presented with some key and critical facts relating to the internal and external issues. And I think President Trump made the very appropriate decision that I think most people, most Americans are now very much supportive of.
Let me ask you what you meant by the Yates testimony. Which testimony you're referring to?
Well, Sally Yates this past week talked about the Mike Flynn issue. Now, remember, Lou, all this stuff going on regarding Mike Flynn was done under Comey. And one of the issues, which in my mind is still first and foremost, is who all had that information available to them. Somehow, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that information ended up in the media, in the New York Times, and on the Washington Post. That happened on James Comey's watch. So Sally Yates admitting that as a part of what she was doing for James Comey didn't help James Comey. And I think this is something that does require a full and complete investigation. Admiral Rogers, director of NSA, said clearly today in his testimony that the FBI has far more information on U.S. citizens than they do at NSA. That tells me, Lou, all the roads lead back to the FBI and those leaks about Mike Flynn, which clearly compromised capability.
Your thoughts on that, Ron?
Well, I think the FBI should have more information on U.S. citizens than does the NSA. The NSA is supposed to be pointed outward, not inward. And it's this incidental collection on Americans that may trigger an FBI investigation. But the FBI is the lead federal domestic investigative agency. So, of course, as I said earlier, there were probably somewhere between 50 and 60,000 criminal cases under my purview when I was assistant director there. That sounds like a lot of cases. That's a lot of Americans, but there's a lot of crime in America, and the FBI is that domestic investigative agency.
Nobody's disputing the idea that the collection happened. The idea is it was leaked. Sensitive methods were leaked. That's the issue. Someone leaked it. That's what is not being looked at appropriately.
And Tony, I would disagree with looked at appropriately. Let me say this.
Really?
This is part of our frustration, mine as a citizen as well as yours. I would like these questions answered yesterday as well. But these investigations, particularly if you're a determined leaker and you're not just picking up your cell phone and calling the Washington Post and the calls are tracked right back to you at the time and place, you know, these can be complicated investigations. They can take weeks, months, or years.
A handful of information have this. A handful of people have this information. It's not that hard.
I hope they are going full speed on everybody who had it. That's really my ultimate hope here, is that the FBI will uncover the truth no matter what it is. If it hurts the Republicans or the Democrats, the goal of the organization is to find the truth, grill the right people, get to the truth, expose it, and then hopefully the truth isn't bent in the political narrative of D.C.